Okay, today we're going to be talking about section 4.4, which is factoring with a coefficient of 1 or -1. Now, factoring using the quadratic expressions, you have to understand what the word factoring means. Factoring is rewriting an expression as a product of factors. Now, back in the day, you probably used factor trees. Factors of 6 would be 2 and 3, and you would have made a nice little factor tree out of it, okay? We're not going to be doing factor trees, but your brain needs to understand what some of the terms mean. So let's first talk about terminology. The first vocabulary word is monomial. It's a number or the product of a number in variables. It is singular. It's a 3, a 5xy. There is no addition or subtraction within a monomial. They're all attached by multiplication or division. A binomial is going to be two monomials attached, but this time it's attached by addition and subtraction. So now that means I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have the numbers 3 minus 5x and 2x plus y. Okay, so that's a binomial. A trinomial would be 3. A polynomial is 3 or more. Okay. Now, back in the day in Algebra 1, you learned the FOIL method. The FOIL method stood for first, outer, inner, last. That was your FOIL method. First, outer, inner, last. Now, super duper important that your brain gets this. So I'm going to teach you, and we're going to go back to what we've learned back in the day. So the first two terms being multiplied together are x times 3x, which gives you a 3x squared. Then our outer terms, whenever you're looking at it as a whole, your outer terms are going to be your x and your 4. You multiply those together to give you a 4x. Your inner terms are going to be the two closest terms together. So that's 2 times 3x, which is going to give you a 6x. And then last terms are going to be the two last terms in each of the parentheses, which is going to be 2 times 4, which gives you an 8. So now all you're going to do is combine like terms, so 3x squared plus a 10x plus an 8. This is what you did back in the day, and you FOILed. Now, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working backwards now. We are going to be given the box, and you're going to come up with a set of parentheses. So that is what our goal is today. Our goal is to come up with two binomials. What is a binomial? A binomial are these two values right here, attached by multiplication. That is going to equal the 3x squared plus 10x plus 8. Okay, so that is our goal today. So the very first thing we're going to do is we see this trinomial. A trinomial means I have 3 terms that they're all attached by addition or subtraction. Okay, now that's all perfect except for our goal is to put them into 2 binomials. So I'm going to draw 2 sets of parentheses. Okay. Now, the first thing I need your brain to do is we need to somehow figure out how we're going to break up the term x squared. X squared is going to go in the first 2 positions of our parentheses. So how do I break up x squared evenly? That's going to be an x and an x. The second thing is I want you to now go ahead and look at the last sign. Okay, the last sign means I need to have a positive. So how do I get a positive? A positive outcome is going to be made by having a positive times a positive or a negative times a negative, meaning your signs must be the same. Okay, well, how do I know which signs to use? Do I use the plus plus or the minus minus? Well, how you determine that is by looking at the middle sign. The middle sign is a plus, so that means I'm going to be utilizing plus plus, which means I need to add, because my signs are the same, I'm going to add my 2 terms together to get this number 9x. So I need to find all the factors of 20. So all the factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10. 20 is not divisible by 3, but it is divisible by 4, 4 and 5. Now, I know many of you are going to struggle with factors, so I'm going to show you a place to go to find those factors. Calculator soup factors. Calculator soup factors. And we're going to click on factoring calculator. And what we're going to do is right here where it says a blank space, find the factors. If you're going to simply put 20 in there and hit enter. It gives you all of your factors that you are going to be utilizing for the factors of 20. Now your goal is to find factors of 20 that are going to, what did we say right here? Add to 9. So 1 and 20 give me 21. 2 and 10 give me 12. 4 and 5 give me a 9. So that means I'm going to be utilizing the factors 4 and 5. So a 4 goes here and a 5 goes here. Now, how do I check to know that I'm right? I'm going to FOIL, but I'm not going to FOIL the whole thing. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to do my inner first, so that gives me a 4x. I'm going to do my outer, which gives me a 5x, and that total gives me a 9x, which is what I want. Now, how can I know for sure that what I did is correct? Well, I wrote x plus 4 times x plus 5. If I wanted to FOIL this completely, I absolutely could. X times x is x squared, x times 5 is 5x, inner is going to be 4x, and last is going to be a 20 to give me an x squared plus a 9x plus a 20. So what this means is I know that I've done my factoring correct, and this right here is my answer, okay? Now, I never want you to waste all of your time by factoring it and then FOILing it. You only have to do the outer and the inner, because the first and the last terms are where you're filling in for your parentheses. So let's go ahead and do this all over again. Same exact thing. I'm going to go into two binomial expressions. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break down the x squared. So how do I break down x squared? X and x. Okay, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the last term sign. The last term sign is a negative, which means how do I get a negative outcome? That means my signs have to be opposite. So if my signs are opposite, that implies that my signs are different, which means instead of adding my numbers together, I'm going to subtract my numbers. Okay? So I'm going to have a plus here, and I'm going to have a minus there. Now I need to find all my factors of 72. Well, again, many of you are not very good with your multiplication tables. So what you're going to do is you're going to come over here to your factoring calculator, and we're going to change our number that we had previously from a 20 to a 72. And those are going to be all of your factors. Now remember, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 8, and 9. 9 goes there. So then it's going to be 9, 12, 18. 24 and 36. Now, I am subtracting, which means I have to get down to 14. 9 and 8 are not going to work. 12 and 6 are not going to work. I have to be over the number 14, which means none of these were even possibilities. I have to be over the number 14 for me to drop down to the number 14. So the very first numbers that are going to work are going to be 4 and 18, and that actually gives me 14. Now, I want you to think about this for a hot second. I need to have a positive 14. So which one of these numbers out of my 4 and 18 are going to give me a positive 14? That means the 18 is positive and the 4 is going to be negative. Okay? So if I check my inner, I get 18x. If I check my outer, I get minus 4x to give me a 14x, which means I know that I've factored this thing appropriately. Okay? Now, ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, I already alluded to this previously, but I'm actually going to put it in terms for you to understand, just in case you need to read it yourself. Ax squared plus bx plus c. When c is positive, then you have the same signs, and that means you're going to take the sign of your b. Okay? You are going to be adding. Super important that your brain knows this. This is going to be adding. Okay? So when your c is positive, you are going to add. However, when your c is negative, then you have to use opposite signs, and that means that you are subtracting. And this is super important that your brain understands this. The larger number gets the middle sign. What do I mean by that? Well, if you looked at our previous example, which number was larger? Was 18 larger or was 4 larger? 18 is larger than 4, so that's why the 18 gets the middle sign, which was plus. Okay, so that's what that means here. Now, again, something that we've already alluded to and I've already spoken to you about, but something I want you to read as well so that you understand. When you multiply two numbers together, any two numbers, to get a positive outcome, your signs must be the same. This is the example where I said that you add. Now, When you multiply two numbers together and you want a negative outcome, this is whenever your signs are opposite, meaning they're different, which means you are going to subtract. Same signs mean add, different signs mean subtract. So, how is this one a little bit different than the previous problems that we've been doing? Well, the previous problem, I had a positive 1x squared. Well, I don't want to change our entire foundation of what we had been learning. So what we need to do is focus on how to do this problem specifically. So what is different is the negative out here. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull that negative out. So if I pull out a -1 out of each one of those terms, what you're essentially doing is division. -1 divided by -1 is positive x squared. 13x divided by -1 is negative 13x. -12 divided by -1 is positive 12. Meaning, if I were to distribute the -1 back in to each of those terms, it is going to give me the original problem. If it does not give you the original problem, you have messed up and you are not going to get the correct factorization. Super important. Now, this -1 that I have hanging out here, guys, that is like your annoying little sibling. If you go away to the mall and you don't come back home with your sibling, your parents are going to be mad, which means that -1 has to stay with you the entire problem through. You cannot drop it and forget it. It is your annoying little sibling. It has to hang out. So the -1 stays, and I'm going to put these into two binomials. So the very first thing we're going to do is we are going to look at the x squared. How do I break down x squared evenly? That's going to be an x and an x. Now I look at my last term sign. It's a positive. How do I get a positive outcome? Either plus plus or minus minus. How do I know which one? Well, I'm going to simply look at the middle term sign. The middle term sign is minus, so that means both of my terms here are going to be minus. I'm still adding the numbers together because the signs are the same, but that just means they're both going to be negative. Okay, so next thing I need to do is I need to find all my factors of 12. 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 and 4. If you do not know how to find your factors because you struggle with multiplication, it is fine if you use calculator soup and type in the number 12 to get all of your factors, okay? Now, I said before, we want to add to get to 13. So if I'm adding, here's 13, here's 8, and here's 7. Those do not work. The only ones that are going to work are a 1 and a 12. This whole thing is your answer. How do I check to know that I'm right? Inners, -x. Outers, -12x. To give me a -13x that I know I'm right in. Okay? Let's do it again. Okay? Now, same thing. What we're going to do is we're going to pull out that -1. Why? Because we don't like our coefficient on our x squared to be a -1. So if I pull that out, I'm doing division. A -x squared divided by -1 is positive x squared. -x divided by -1 is positive x. Positive 20 divided by -1 is -20. Okay, so remember, the -1 must stay with the entire problem. That's your annoying little sibling that is tagging along with you and your friends. It has to stay there. Okay, how do I split up x squared? Well, I'm going to make that into an x and an x, and it goes in the first position. Okay, the next thing I need your brain to look at is what is the last term's sign. The last term sign is going to be a negative, which means I need to have a negative outcome, which means my signs must be different. One is positive and one is negative. This means that I am subtracting, and the larger factor is going to get the middle term side. The middle term side is plus. So I need to now find all of the factors of 20. All the factors of 20 are 1 and 20, 2 and 10, 4 and 5. And again, it's totally fine for you to come over to your factor calculator and put in 20. Okay? So we now have all of our factors, and I want them to subtract to give me a 1. So if I subtract these, that's 19, that's an 8, and that's a 1. So that means if I want a positive 1, I'm utilizing 4 and 5, but the positive goes with the 5 and the negative goes with the 4. So this is what you have. How do I check? Inner's 5x, outer's minus 4x to give me a 1x. And this whole thing, including the GCF of a -1, is what we are going to have as our answer. Okay, we got 3 more problems, then I'm going to go straight to your homework. Same exact philosophy here. So very first thing I see is a negative, so I'm going to pull out the -1, changing each one of these signs. Okay. Next, I'm going to put this into 2 parentheses, splitting up the w squared. The w squared is going to be a w here and a w there. And then my brain is going to look at this last sign. That last sign says that it's negative. So that means I need to have a positive and a negative, which means I am subtracting, right? So if I'm subtracting, I now need to find all of the factors of 44. So again, go over to your calculator soup, type in 44, and you are going to get 1 and 44, 2 and 22, and 4 and 11. So I'm going to write those down for you, 1 and 44, 2 and 22, and 4 and 11. Now, if I'm subtracting, I have to get over this middle term. So 11, 22, and 44 are bigger than 7, so I'm going to simply subtract. 11 minus 4 gives me a 7, this gives me a 20, and this gives me a 43. These do not work. The only ones that are going to work are 4 and 11. Which number is larger? Is the 4 larger or is the 11 larger? The 11 is larger, so therefore it's going to get the middle sign, which means it has to go with the minus sign, and the 4 goes with the plus sign. So let's go ahead and check this. 4w minus 11w is going to give you -7w. So I know that I am correct. Okay? 2 more examples. Now, this one right here, totally different in our brain. It's not just a -1, it's a -4. So the question I have for you, are each of these terms divisible by the number -4? And your answer to that should be yes, it is. So I'm going to pull out a -4. So what is -4 divided by -4? Positive x squared. -36 divided by -4 is positive 9x. -32 divided by -4 is positive 8. So again, we're going to put this into 2 binomials. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break down this x squared term. So how do I do that? That's going to be an x and an x. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this plus. I need to have my signs be the same, so plus plus or minus minus. How do I determine which one it's going to be? I look at the middle sign. The middle sign says plus, so I have to have plus plus. Since my signs are the same, I'm going to add. Now I need all of the factors of 8, so that's 1 and 8, 2 and 4. I need to add them to get to 9. So that gives me a 9 and a 6. So that means I'm going to use 1 and 8. So how do I know that I'm right? Inner gives me an x, outer gives me an 8x to give me a 9x. And you know that you are done. Last example. Again, we want to look at this 2 and see if the 18 and the 28 are both divisible by 2. They're both even, so that means yes. So I'm going to pull out a factor of 2. When you pull out a GCF, you are doing the operation of division. 2 divided by 2 is going to be a 1x squared. -18 divided by 2 is -9x. -28 divided by 2 is -14. Okay? So now, keep going. This becomes an x and an x. What I need to focus on is that last term sign. I have to have opposite signs, which means I am subtracting, which means now I need to find all my factors of my last term, which are 14, 1 and 14, 2 and 7. I am subtracting these numbers, and I need to come up with a 9. Well, here's my question. Am I ever going to come up with a 9? I can only get a 1 and a 14 or a 2 and a 7. None of those are going to subtract to give me a 9, which means I cannot factor this at all. which means this is as far as I can go. Okay? Since I cannot get 9, 1 and 14, subtracting them is going to give me a lovely little 13, and 2 and 7. If you are confused and you want to check your factoring, by all means, come over here and say, what are all my factors of 14? 1 and 14, 2 and 7. Those are never going to give you 9, which means this is as far as it can go, is pulling out our GCF, and the rest is what we call irreducible. Okay? Tonight's homework is 4-4 worksheet 1, factoring with coefficients 1 or -1.